Hello and welcome to Lyra Nara. In today's video we're gonna talk about the four cornerstones or pillars of vitality and health. Those are four very important points that you have to pay attention to, and they are all within your power in order to prevent illnesses, but also when you treat illnesses. So, without further ado, let's learn more about those very important cornerstones of preventing illnesses and dealing with them. And we're gonna start with one of the most important ones, and that is your nutrition. Did you know that in the course of 40 years of life you consume about 42,000 meals, and that it is equivalent to 21,000 tons or about 10.5 millions of pounds of food? Do these quantities of food eventually have some effects on our bodies? Well, in autopsies, we can see the huge amount of waste that accumulate in our organism over our lifetime. We can smell the foul odors, and we can get stunned when we discover the clogged vessels and decomposed and degenerated organs. So yes, definitely all this food and the wrong nutrition has effects on our bodies. There is a direct relationship between the earth's cleanliness, our foods, and our health. We must eat the right food, we must also permanently purify our bodies, and we must stay governed by nature's rules. Inflammation, pain, and other symptoms are due to the friction between the waste and the pipe system that causes overheating and gas pressure that causes congestion. And the most and first affected by all of this waste that accumulate within our system are our capillaries. They are easy to get clogged when we consume the wrong type of food. It is like the soot in the stovepipe, even worse because the human soot is sticky due to the mucus and behaves like a paste, as well as many times carrying pus due to the meat decomposition. And I want to remind you that Hippocrates already said, the more you feed a sick person, the more you harm him. Let your food be your medicine, and your medicine be your food. So let's see what we mean by these clogged tubes and organs, and you can see here in the image on the right how such a clogged system looks like in an autopsy. The main accumulation points of the uneliminated waste are located primarily in your digestive tract. Particularly affected are your colon, that suffers eternal constipation, but also your stomach, the small intestine, and the liver. And the average person has continuously about 10 pounds of uneliminated feces that clogs up the colon and poisons the blood and the whole body. But not only the uneliminated feces, but also the mucus that is generated by undigested food clogs up your gastrointestinal tract. And this is the result of diets that are based on excessive proteins, fats, and starchy foods. Every disease is an effort of your organism to solve its internal health problems, meaning it wants to eliminate the surplus of waste, the mucus and the toxins, but also the uric acid and the drugs that are stored in the body for decades. And not the diseases, but the body has to be healed, cleansed, and freed up from this waste and foreign matters, as well as the toxins that have accumulated during an irrational consummatory life. Latent diseases are attempts of your body to eliminate those waste, the mucus and the toxins. For example, a cold or influenza purges out a lot of mucus. If you have cold, flus, indigestions, diarrhea, palpitations, dizziness, or even anxiety, those are all signs that your system is trying to get rid of these overloads. The dissolved chemical poisons are then being taken into the bloodstream, and they affect your nervous system, causing extreme nervousness, dizziness, anxiety, depression, and excessive heartbeats, as well as other very strange sensations. And this blood then further flows to your kidneys, which try to filtrate more toxins such as the albumin, uric acid, the bile excess, etc. And the toxins throughout the entire system are one of the most harmful factors that lower your vitality and your endurance. Keep in mind, nobody has a perfectly clean colon or system. So how can we then get rid of these obstructions that build up over time within our bodies, especially when we eat the wrong type of foods and overeat? And we can think here, just to imagine it in a better, simpler way, of a car engine. You know, when you have a car engine and you're trying to clean it out, would you do it by continually operating it at high speeds? No, of course not. You will first flush it out to get rid of the obstructions. For example, by changing the oil and the filters. And after you've reduced this obstruction, the engine will work with less friction and more ideally, and it is the same with our bodies. So, methods to decrease the obstructions in our bodies. We must decrease the quantity of food that we consume of all kinds, ideally down to 500 to 700 grams per day, but this of course depends on your weight and your height. And it's ideal to also combine it with alternate fasting. We should also decrease or stop completely consuming mucus generating foods or acidic foods and increase the intake of mucus dissolving foods. This will lead to a more unobstructed function of the lungs, the heart and our blood circulation. Our power is infinite, and this goes for everyone, but its activity slows down at the speed that you accumulate obstructions as you overeat the wrong types of food especially, and diminish the contra pressure of the tissues thereby. And it is worthless to increase power or vitality as long as your body is full of obstructions. It will not work. So we must remove the obstructions through intelligent customized menus. And because this is not taken into account, so many diets, fasting and other cures fail. The layman understands that he or she has only to eliminate, and the faster the better. He or she feels fine for a while then, but the dissolving and the elimination process continues deeper. The obstruction increases even further, and the subject will eventually feel worse, terribly weak, and will fall back on the wrong diet and lose faith, often saying that, yeah, I tried it, but it did not work out for me. And vitality does not depend primarily and directly upon food, but on how much obstruction is in your human engine, so to speak. And removing the obstructions by artificially increasing the power through stimulants or shaking or vibrations will always be at the expense of vitality. Vital energy, physical and mental efficiency, the endurance, your superior health will all be achieved by eliminating these obstructions, and you will feel beyond your wildest dreams when you have achieved this. And the limit of going without food under such ideal conditions is not known yet. The composition of power, besides air, oxygen, water, steam, increases in a clean body when we use agents such as electricity, ozone, light, especially sunlight. And we're going to talk about the importance of sunlight shortly. Good smells of flowers, fruits, vegetables, etc. And a mucusless diet is the best way to heal your system and is the pathway to the highest vitality. What is a mucusless non-acidic diet? When in food lie 99.99% of the causes of all diseases and the imperfect health of any kind. Consequently, all healing and therapies will continue to fail if you refuse to take nutrition into consideration. Mucusless diet consists of natural food, while mucus-forming acidic diet is harmful, of course, and produces diseases. All other dietetics are wrong because they lay their focus on food values entirely instead of cleansing and healing food. It is not enough to know which foods are mucusless and which are mucus forming, but more important is how far and how fast a change can successfully be made. How also to combine the different mucusless non-acidic foods, how long and how often fasting must be done, and how we should combine it with a regular diet. Here are some general rules. All fruits, leafy green vegetables and nuts are mucus-free, either raw or slightly cooked. All other foods are mucus and acid forming and therefore harmful. But this is of course a very simplistic way of putting it. Vegetarian diets use a mixture of good foods with eggs and milk that causes overeating, and they are worse therefore than moderate meat eating and less mixed diets. Wrong cooking can also destroy the values of your foods. A raw food diet creates many complications. A mucusless diet uses therefore raw food as well as cooked and stewed and baked food, depending on the targeted healing and the health condition. And before you swallow down the food, as a general rule, try also to chew the food at least 30 to 50 times. Eat slowly and mindfully and chew it enough. Also, try to restrict your meals to only two, a lunch between 11 to 12 a.m. and a dinner between 4 to 6 p.m. if that's possible. The food is good for you also if it is mixed with your own mucus and toxemias and eliminates these poisons. A mucusless diet is a healing process through which a sick person must go if he or she wants to be perfectly healed and also regenerate quickly after a disease. Never drink during the meal also is recommended. Soups should not be consumed at the same time, with the same meal as other solid food. And a mucusless diet must be progressively modulated until the final stage is reached, that is mucusless fasting. Alright, so we have the first pillar, and that is nutrition. Pay attention to your nutrition. If you just want to lose weight, by the way, it doesn't matter which diet you follow, as long as you reduce the calorie intake, you will lose weight. But if it's about a healthy diet, then you must pay attention to all of the points that we've discussed. What is then cornerstone number 2, or the second pillar of remaining healthy and vital? And that is breathing. Yes, we don't pay attention to our breathing enough. It works automatically. But as you will see, we should pay more attention to this very simple and elementary part of our lives. So, as we've mentioned already, we can create a formula that says that vitality equals power minus the obstructions that we've discussed. And power is the energy that drives the human machinery, which keeps us alive and gives us strength and endurance. And O is the obstruction, the encumbrance, the foreign matters, the toxemias, the mucus, all that we have discussed, that clogs up your system and reduces the perfect function of your internal organs. And when the obstruction becomes higher than the power, your body will eventually die or become diseased. The human engine is an air-gas engine that is constructed from a rubber-like, very elastic, spongy material called flesh and tissues, as we all know. It functions like a pump system through air pressure and with an inside circulation of liquids, that is our blood, lymph, the saliva and other fluids. And the pump of all these fluids are the lungs and not the heart, which is only the valve. And for over 400 years, medicine erroneously considered exactly the opposite to be true, but nowadays we know the pump are your lungs actually. The heart is only a valve. The body is facing the atmospheric counter pressure, of course, which is at about 14 pounds to the square inch. And the organism functions automatically by inhaling air under the force of atmospheric pressure and expelling chemically changed air that contains carbon dioxide due to the lungs vacuum cavity that has been created. And this is our perpetual life power, and we live as long as we breathe, of course. This is possible because the engines, or our lungs and all the other organs, are spongy and elastic when they are healthy, with an intrinsic ability of vibration, expansion and contraction. The chemist Hensel experimentally demonstrated that this spongy, elastic tissue is a matrix of lime-sugar combination, so you can develop vitality and health through breathing correctly. The lungs also provide, through the process of respiration, an essential chemical, and that is carbon dioxide. Yes, that's right, you need also carbon dioxide within your system in the right concentration. You can have the right blood pH maintained constantly between 735 and 742, and perfectly working blood vessels, thus a good circulation, only if you secure a concentration of 6.5% of carbon dioxide in your blood. You can also remove the obstructions by higher air pressure. It is possible to remove the obstructions due to foreign matters by local vibrations and detoxification. You can increase power artificially for a certain time, but it will be at the expense of your vitality. You can imagine it like a rubber band that is permanently stretched and eventually will lose its elasticity. You relieve diseases, but slow down your vitality, especially of the spongy organs such as your lungs, your liver and your kidneys. When it comes to breathing patterns are very important. You know from your own experience that when you are stressed, your breathing patterns are as follows. You breathe faster, you sigh more often, you breathe irregularly, you breathe through your mouth, you practice what is known as upper chest breathing, you notice your breathing, you pant, you eventually can even ventilate, your mouth gets dry, your limb extremities get colder, your blood circulation is impaired, and you can even feel anxiety and can have panic attacks because your body does not get enough oxygen, and that is known as hypoxia. When you are relaxed, on the other hand, your breathing patterns are totally different. You breathe slower, about 6 to 8 breaths per minute. You practice soft breathing. You breathe through your nose mainly. You practice what is known diaphragm breathing. You breathe silently, your mouth is moist, your extremities get warmer, your whole body gets warmer and more pleasant. Your blood circulation is more homogeneous, your blood pressure is well regulated, your mind is calm, you feel no anxiety, you have no panic attacks because all of your cells are well oxygenated. And we all know if we do not breathe for just 3 minutes, we are going to die. If we breathe incorrectly, however, that is less known, we will become sick eventually. And as we've mentioned already, our life depends on a perfect blood pH in the range of 735 to 745. If our blood pH moves down to 6.8 or up to 7.8, let's say, our cells are starting to die and we will shortly follow. In our brain there is actually a sensor that controls the blood pH and buffers the pH. And if the pH is getting too acidic, it will alkalize the blood using bicarbonate. We produce bicarbonate naturally in our bodies. And if the blood pH gets too alkaline, it will acidify the blood using carbonic acid. And the buffer between carbonic acid and bicarbonate, the blood needs one more thing for that, and that is carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is available in the atmosphere, of course, but it is also produced in our lungs as a result of our breathing, of our exhalation. In the atmosphere, there is about 0.03% carbon dioxide, and the rest of carbon dioxide is, of course, mainly consumed by plants. We need about 40 mmHg pressure, that is equivalent to the 6.5% carbon dioxide in our blood, in order to be able to buffer the blood pH. In the gas that we exhale, there is about 3.7% carbon dioxide. Thus, the main source for CO2 for us humans is the exhaled air that is enriched with CO2. And to achieve this 6.5% ideal concentration of CO2 in our blood, we need to manufacture CO2 and store it in our lungs. The human body requirement for oxygen is only 5% mmHg, and in the atmosphere there is about 21% of oxygen, so 4 times more than is needed by our bodies, and this means that through simple breathing we will always get enough oxygen into our systems. We do not have to manufacture oxygen, we do not need to store it, it is just enough to breathe. So let's see what we can do about this breathing, how we can practice what is known as functional breathing. And if we assimilate the lungs with a spa bathtub, we see that both have a pump, a reservoir, an inlet and an outlet. To function well, the bathtub must always have enough water above the inlet and the outlet. And to secure this 6.5% of CO2 in the lungs at all times, the level of CO2 must be always above a minimum of 35 mmHg. The brain is actually set to trigger new breathing once the CO2 has reached this level of 35. If you breathe functionally, you will secure the necessary CO2 levels of 35 and above, so about 6.5% CO2 concentration in your blood. Below 30 mmHg, your body will become dysfunctional and will get sick. What does functional breathing mean? Well, you breathe regularly, 6 to 8 times per minute. Your breathing must be driven by the diaphragm, not your upper chest. Inhalation is always through the nose and exhalation is always through the mouth. Inhalation must be always silent. During your breathing in, the air must be pushed from the upper chest to the belly with the diaphragm muscle that is located underneath your rib cage. Your inhalation must feel like your thorax and your ribs are sidewise expanding to the left and right, making you wider. The exhalation must occur up to the level of emptying the lungs, using again your diaphragm and sucking or pushing up your belly, and this will feel like you are getting longer and your ribs and thorax move up. Also, breathe in the relaxed manner, breathe rhythmically, and breathe silently. We must learn how to control the number and the depth of our breath using the diaphragm muscle. And if we change our breathing patterns, our brain will also change its settings accordingly. We breathe about 28 to 30,000 times per day. So we can all imagine what will happen if all 30,000 breaths are out of balance and we run insufficient concentration of CO2. The symptoms will start occurring and we will get more and more sick. Correct breathing is also very important for detoxifying. The major drainage system of our body that purges out all the ingested toxins and the pathogen die-offs and the mutated cells as well as mutated hormones is our lymphatic system. We have about 65,000 miles of lymphatic tubes in us and only about 25,000 miles of blood vessels, so clearly the lymphatic system is very important. Unfortunately, our lifestyle today clogs up our lymphatic system and therefore this lymphatic system cannot work properly anymore and do its job, which is detoxifying our system. And the blood therefore will carry around all of the toxins and the cellular debris that should be cleaned out by the lymphatic system in our bodies, and we will get sicker and sicker. Problem with the lymphatic system is that it doesn't have its own pumping mechanism. While muscular movement clearly helps the lymphatic system to move, the breathing is equally important to help activate lymph drainage. Lymphatic fluid is draining into subclavian veins, namely 80% into the left vein and 20% into the right vein. Dr. Jack Shields, who is a prominent MD lymphologist in California, conducted a study in 1979 using cameras inside of our bodies that showed that deep breathing causes the lungs to press into the thoracic duct, and this in turn presses the lymph fluid into the bloodstream. When exhaling, the pressure of millions of check valves throughout the entire lymphatic system are being relieved, and the lymphatic fluid works then like a geyser. This increases the rate of toxic elimination by as much as 15 times the normal pace of elimination, and you heal as you bring in more oxygen to the cells and eliminate more toxins. This breathing art heals also cancer and many diseases. It can help you lose weight, and of course it helps you detoxify. And with that we come to the third pillar or cornerstone of vitality and health, and that is, you might not believe this, intermediate or intermittent stress. Yes, we all know that long-term stress is very harmful, but very few know that actually intermittent stress can be very beneficial, and there is some very interesting research that I'm going to present to you here quickly that clearly indicates that. For example, the cold shower experiment. In this experiment, patients were exposed to cold water. It was applied on the lower legs, the upper legs, the shoulders, the arms and the spine of the patients for only 70 seconds. And before and after the 70 seconds of cold showering, the activated vitamin D in the blood serum was measured. And as you can see also from the graph on the right, the result was a 17% increase of concentration in activated vitamin D. But what is this activated vitamin D and why is it important for our health? Activated vitamin D results from the conversion of passive vitamin D3 that we store in our skin as a result of exposure to sunlight. Activated vitamin D can be induced when we use cold, in this case cold water. Heat maps of vitamin D responsive genes for 3 patients before and after vitamin D activation with cold water was measured. Conversion of vitamin D3 deposits into activated vitamin D serum levels was observed. And what was observed was that above 25 nanograms per milliliter of activated vitamin D, there were significant changes in the heat map of genes, as you can see also from the picture in the bottom right corner. This means that activated vitamin D is the trigger that controls genetic regulation in our body. Monocytes are also stimulated by activated vitamin D, and this secures a deep detoxification and a fast lymphatic drainage. Also, all of our defense mechanisms are triggered by this activated vitamin D. And vitamin D is activated when sun and cold come together. In 1928, the German biochemist Adolf Windaus received the Nobel Prize for the discovery of the sensoric-motoric control loop of calcium and phosphate. In 1971, Professor Michael Holick discovered activated vitamin D, and Holick published over 448 scientific papers on the subject of activated vitamin D, and you can see them, for example, on PubMed. Professor Armin Ziderman studied the bioactivity of activated vitamin D on the heart, and he found that a lack of activated vitamin D induces congestive heart failure. He also published over 84 scientific papers on the influence of activated vitamin D on the cardiovascular system, and you can also see them for yourself at PubMed. And all of these pillars that we discussed today go hand in hand, as you can see here also from the link between activated vitamin D and nutrition. Activated vitamin D concentration increases with a lower meat and cheese consumption, so meat, sausages, burgers and cheese, they all contain a lot of phosphate, and high phosphate decreases the activated vitamin D concentration, as you can see, of course, also from these graphs. And the research on activated vitamin D has clearly shown that it not only reduces cardiovascular diseases and the risk of heart failure and cardiovascular death, but the risk of death in general. It has a genetic control function also. It opens up our DNA library. It is also an important neurotransmitter. It acts in an antibacterial and antiviral fashion. It works also as an anti-carcinogen and as an electric battery for the skeleton and the muscle system. The antibacterial action of activated vitamin D stems from the in-body synthesized cathelicidin, which interacts with the bacteria and destroys the bacterial cellular wall. As you can see from the graphs on the right, the life expectancy significantly increases with the concentration of activated vitamin D. With 78 nanograms per liter, the life expectancy can exceed 100 years. A study in Belgium showed that activated vitamin D levels below 35 nanograms per liter are a high risk factor for our life. And many studies about a life expectancy based on activated vitamin D can be also found on PubMed. And with that, we come to the fourth cornerstone or pillar of vitality and health, and that is regular exercise. Why? Because sport decreases calcium concentration, and without supplementing calcium, the control loop must start its work regulating the calcium concentration and thus increases the thyroid hormone as well as the activated vitamin D concentration. When we supplement 1350 milligrams of calcium during exercising, for example through calcium-containing drinks, the calcium thyroid hormone service is less active, thus less activated vitamin D is produced. Conclusion thereof is that sport activates vitamin D, which is great. However, we must keep the calcium supplementation in check and moderate it. Another benefit of regular exercise is adrenaline production. And adrenaline is a major player in our body with extraordinarily important functions. It regulates our sugar metabolism, vasodilation, and optimizes cellular oxygenation. It also supervises our immune responses. It controls also and balances our blood and tissue pH and creates the adequate stress responses. A fascinating fact and why exercise is beneficial for adrenaline production is that muscle cells are capable of metabolizing glucose independently of hormones and oxygen and without toxic products. Our muscles produce the neutralizing dextrorotatory lactic acid, which in turn stimulates adrenaline production. Muscle activity can secure dextrorotatory lactic acid, which leads to a discharge of adrenaline, to glycogenolysis, to a dilation of the capillaries, to an increase in heart rate, better cellular oxygenation, faster elimination of acidic waste, and much more. And this is pure health, especially when practiced regularly, preferably outside, to also collect all the benefits of the sunlight and the fresh air. And by the way, you don't have to overdo it with your exercise. It is already beneficial if you just walk 30 minutes per day. Just do something and do it regularly. Time for conclusions then. Yes, medicinal treatments are important and necessary to treat diseases. But if we do not pay attention to the other pillars of vitality and health that we have discussed in this video, which are nutrition, fasting, breathing, exercising, and detoxing regularly, the success of any therapy is highly questionable and limited. And preventive medicine is the best pathway to vitality and health. It's much better to be proactive than reactive. much better to maintain a healthy system and prevent diseases than having to deal with them. Do not abuse your body and hope that medication alone will take care of your condition. This must be a coordinated, holistic effort on all levels. And as we have learned also, and not many people know that, short-term stress is actually beneficial. Therefore, you should take a cold shower in the morning, you should exercise. Those are types of intermittent beneficial stress. Long-term stress, on the other hand, leads of course to psychological, mental as well as physical diseases. Long-term stress is actually the main driving force also of adrenaline depletion, with all of the negative consequences for our health. So pay attention to your psycho-emotional conflicts and to the stress situations that you keep yourself in, and try to resolve them as quickly as possible. And you do not have to fret or fear. We at Lyra Nara are here to help you. We are here to educate you to make better decisions, and will guide and assist you professionally through your efforts to tackle any condition. Just contact us, shop@lyranara.com. The complete contact information, including our toll-free phone number, is also going to be in the description box below. If you've enjoyed this presentation, please also do not forget to support our work by liking, sharing and subscribing. Also hit the notifications button, that is the little bell icon on your screen, so that you get notified when a new video comes out, which it does every week. And with all that being said, I hope that you stay healthy. Until next time.